Hello, 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 hello. What's up, guys? Welcome to a Red Monday. We're going to finally see the bounce. We're going to look at that. Some thoughts on the big picture. I do want to point out some longer term views that I think should be made note of here. But we'll give it a minute. As always, this is our Monday live stream chart reviews, potential setups to be watching, thoughts on the markets, and anything else you guys want to talk about. Of course, today's President's Day here in the United States, and the stock market was closed, so no stock trading for me this morning. Got into the office late, slept in. It's all good. But of course, crypto's red, so you know, who's buying the dip? I will admit I did buy this dip here just this morning. I almost did yesterday. Was looking a little bit exhausted on the 1 hour, but I thought, I'm just gonna wait, go to sleep, not think about this. Woke up, price was lower. I said, okay, maybe now. Bouncing off some support, so I'm thinking it's just a bounce trade though. But we will go over all of that here in a minute. I'm just going to give it a minute, let some more folks come in. Thank you guys that are already here. Thanks seeing the comments come through. Appreciate it. But hey, it was due, right? It was due. But yeah, the volume for sure is off the charts, and it felt that way over the weekend. I made comments of that on the Slack group. I'm generally a little bit less active during the weekends, but I did notice the trading volume. I took a peek at the charts, and I did note that the break was pretty bearish on that initial break off the top for most of those alts. And what didn't surprise me that we saw more downside pressure. I finally caught that short on XRP, but unfortunately, it was such a fast move down. I had some buy orders to cover; they were filled, and then when it bounced, I thought maybe I should buy this, sell the short, the bounce and short again, and I didn't, so I missed on the second half of that drop. It would have been a nice little bounce, nice little short trade. But I attempted a few short attempts here. It was basically a slight green trade. It had this quick wick, then it made a new high over the weekend. And when I saw this big reversal here, I took a few shots at it here, and admittedly didn't go anywhere for the better part of about a day. Just kind of sat choppy, was in the red and the green and the red. I was like, man, maybe I should just close this out and take the weekend off. And then sure enough, we saw this crack here on Saturday. And I put some dip orders here at just above the 30-cent mark. Went for a hike, came back, my dip orders were filled, made for a nice little, quick trade over the weekend. And this was on margin, so that's plenty of a move when you're on margin. And it made for a nice trade. But then I bounced over the week, over the day here, and I thought maybe I should just short. And I thought about putting in some short orders here up at the highs, thinking if it filled, I'll take a short entry there going into 33 cents. Of course, that never happened, and I never put those orders in. I just said forget it and take the day off. I had another nice drop, would have made for basically almost doubled my profits on that trade, but it's okay. It was a decent day for me on just that one trade. And but now that we've bounced here, we're coming to some key support levels, which we'll watch here. I'm going to go through the charts here and point out some key levels, but you can see there's a lot of horizontal price support levels being attempted to bounce from, and I think we're a little bit near term oversold, a little bit of a exhaustion, ready for a little bit of a bounce. So that's all I'm looking at, but I think the longer term picture still got to be a little cautious from that perspective. So let's get to it. We'll start with the Bitcoin chart here first. No, actually, I take that back. We're going to start with the BTC dominance and the total market cap charts, and then we'll look at the Bitcoin chart. And so looking at the BTC dominance, that's the 1 hour. Who cares about that? But look at this here. We had this little bit of a bounce. For those of you that have been following along, we were leaning more in favor of the alts just because of the broader trend change here on this dominance chart. signifying that even while Bitcoin was going up, the alts were gaining ground faster, which is good. And sure enough, we bounced right around that 62. That was my target, was 62 for a potential bounce. And what this means is a bounce on this chart means a pullback on the alts versus Bitcoin. Now, the question was, how big of a pullback, a trend change pullback, or just a dip pullback, all right? And right now, it's too early to tell. And in fact, the broader trend in alts versus BTC are still holding up good for the most part, and this is just looking like a dip pullback, and so that's something to note. But this was the first support level on this chart, looking for that bounce. We did see that bounce. I was thinking maybe as high as 66 to 68%. That'd be a big move, but still could happen. We saw a pretty decent bounce up to around 65 here yesterday, pulling back a little bit. And the biggest drivers of this chart here are going to basically be those top 5 names, right? ETH, XRP, Bitcoin Cash. If they're strong versus Bitcoin, then this chart will continue to drop further. And I expect over the course of the year, we will see this chart retreat much further, but there's, it's not going to happen without its bounces, right? There's going to be pullbacks, retracements, and that's just the nature of the markets. People take profits, they cycle them in and out of different coins. You get big moves in ETH and XRP, pull that back, push it into Bitcoin or some other alt, and vice versa, rinse, repeat, right? And the trick is always which is the coin to be in at the time. Unless you're just kind of long-term hold and diversified and you don't really care about all that trading stuff. But I know a lot of you guys do, so we'll look at that. Looking at the total crypto market cap here, did hit that $300 billion mark last week, pulling back here over the weekend, right back down to $270 billion. Not a huge drop, but certainly seen a meaningful pullback. The last time we saw a little bit of a meaningful pullback was this mid-January correction when we saw about a week's worth of pullback. That was really the last big low in Bitcoin around 8,400 before we had that strong move up to 10K here recently. So where do we go from here? What I want to point out are some key support levels on the BTC chart. Now, I shared this last night in a tweet. I also posted it on the Slack group with a little bit more detail behind it. But let me close some of these out here. And in fact, let me turn off some of my alerts so we don't see all the lines, make it a little easier for you guys. But there's a couple of ways to watch this here. And in fact, I'm going to clear this off and just redraw the chart as I think out loud so you guys can get a feel for the thought process here. There's a couple of ways to watch this. The first was, the moving averages have shown to be support along the way through this bounce or through this rally. And yesterday's low came to the 22 EMA on the daily bounce, but then finally undercut that here today. Is this the potential turning of the trend, or is this just another consolidation along the broader uptrend? Technically speaking, the trend is still in place, but it's starting to get a little shaky here because you've got a low, not much of a bounce. You can't really call that a lower high. I mean, it's a daily. This is still within the same broader move. So you've still got a higher low being placed. This prior higher low around 9,200, 9,100, obviously undercutting that completely changes the trend. Or if you get a bounce here on the daily, let's say you get a bounce from this point, and you make a lower high sub 10.2, and then you undercut that, right? Then at that point, technically, you could say, hey, this trend is turning, and you would likely see that way in advance with the moving averages. Right now, the 10 EMA is still above the 22. If you're bullish, best case scenario is this is just kind of sideways type of consolidation, maybe a bull flag, a little bit of a pause, could form a cup and handle, ascending triangle base, whatever. And that's what you're looking at. So it's still very much early. Now, looking at the trading bot, finally, it was long for quite some time, finally decided to go flat on the daily chart I noticed this morning. The 4-hour had been getting chopped around, went flat on Saturday, early Saturday, middle of the night, and so far has been proven right, so that's good. So the trading bot is certainly saying flat, done for now, but that's the first level to be watching, these moving averages, the broader trend, right? The higher highs, the higher lows, that sort of thing. And we had a very nice stair-step move along the way up, which sets up for some clean and very clear horizontal price support levels to be watching, the first of which we're seeing a bounce from right now. All right, so this 94, 9,500 level on this chart, let me change this drawing tool here. If you zoom in here, I'm going to go to the 4-hour chart, start marking out some of these levels. You know, we had this little bit of a resistance back here at the end of January, early February, where price was just really bouncing below that 9,500. You had that fake shakeout and then a quick recovery. Actually, we were doing a live stream on this day here, and I said, this is, 9,500 is going to be in the rearview mirror here quick, because it's, after many attempts, the fake out, shakeout, and then finally pushing back high on this volume, I thought it's not going to be very long. And sure enough, we saw it breaking above 9,500 during the course of the stream, and it was just kind of off to the races from that point. So on the way down, prior resistance becomes potential support, and then you've got another level just below that, which is this little range right in here. That's around that 9,100 level, and this was, again, a little bit of resistance here. This was also this very clear support level just above there. So you've got a little range down there, and so the fact that there are some clean horizontal price points to be watching is actually quite beneficial from the broader trend perspective, because it was clean, it was stair-stepping up, and so there are clear levels from which buyers can take shots at on the way down if you're inclined to buy the dip, if you will. And so the first one we're seeing basically is this first little bounce, and this is a very, very short-term bounce, but you're seeing an attempt here around this 9,500 level. If we zoom into the 1-hour chart, just so you guys can get a closer look at that, again, clearly still in a downtrend, even on the hourly charts. The 10 EMA is trending lower, the 22 EMA on the hourly is trending lower, but you're getting a little bit of a bounce attempt on some decent volume coming in here. And so if we start to close above this 97, 9,800 level, I think we'll see a 4-hour bounce. First target is going to be that 10K number. That's going to be your first near-term resistance level on the way up. That's also going to start putting it in line with some moving averages on the way up. So that's what I'm going to be watching for. However, I'm not going like full aggressive here yet. I'm thinking it's just a little bit of a bounce trade. There's still the possibility that this just kind of has that spike low, and we see sub 9,400 level prices today or tomorrow. And so I'm definitely going to save some dry powder and to scale in. Now, I think we'll see a decent bounce, even if it continues lower over the longer term. I think we'll see a decent bounce coming into this next support level, which is 9,100 level or above. And so I'm going to start to scale in there and keep a relatively tight stop just below that. And here's why I am looking at that. So if we zoom out and go back to this 4-hour chart, I'm going to kind of set this up here. There's a couple of key things. And now, for those of you that are familiar with the Fibonacci retracement levels, I'm going to start that with the impulse move that began on January 2nd, really the start of the year. We had what I would consider the right shoulder of this small daily inverse head and shoulder pattern that formed over November, December. And this last right shoulder here, that was really the start of the impulse move. And so if we measure that basically from end to end, right, to the start of that move up to the highs that we saw right around this 10.5 level, what are those pullback levels to be watching on the way down? And it's real interesting to see that, you've got this 382 level right here, which is this prior dip, prior high. And then you've got the 618 level, which is, this basically 8,300. Now that's a long ways down from here, but that's kind of your golden ratio, if you will. If it's going to pull back, that's the most you want to see it pull back. And so those are the major levels I'm watching. If we do see a broader pullback on the daily chart, this 382 level, this 50% level, and then maybe the 618, I would be personally a little bit surprised if we saw it go that deep. But those are some of the bigger picture numbers to be watching on the daily time frame and even the weekly, which we'll get to here shortly, because I think there's a potential for a big pattern setup on that weekly chart, which is actually quite bullish. And so a pullback here would be healthy, in my opinion. And so that's what I'm going to be watching. Now, I think near term we could see a little bit of a bounce, maybe to these moving averages, maybe for a quick scalp to 10K. But then do we roll over, make a lower high on the daily chart and then another lower low? I think so, personally. But it's still very early on in this move. And this was healthy, I think. I mean, we were getting pretty euphoric on the sentiment reading here across the board, and there was some fantastic moves to be had, no doubt. But things were extended. We all knew that. It was just a matter of when, not if, we got a correction. And we're finally seeing that correction. And so now it's like, do you buy the dip or do you wait for the thing to turn and then you start to play the bounce once it looks like it's going higher, and maybe you do a combination of the both, right? And the question is still alts or Bitcoin, and I think alts, especially some of the bigger cap leaders, have been strong, will continue to do well. So I think combination of both, maybe a little bit slightly more towards alts. I think some of the mid cap tier names, those small caps that are putting those long bases on the weekly charts, still haven't really broken out. Those are definitely names to look at. So we'll be looking at some of those here after I cover Bitcoin. I want to spend a little bit of time on the BTC chart because, of course, it's important and it's going to really drive the overall picture in crypto land, just because even though it's come down a little bit from the dominance, it's still over 60% of the entire crypto market cap. And that's assuming the market cap for some of those alts are actually believable, right? And so it's probably higher than that. So BTC dominance certainly makes changes things in the crypto market space here. And so those are some levels to be watching here near term. I think we see a little bit of a bounce on some of these numbers off of this, but if we do spike down, that 382 level is going to be a real interesting number to be watching. That's basically between 9100 9200. The exact number here is 9150. I'm just going to put it as a little bit of a range here, and see where it goes from there, but that's going to be real interesting to watch. I did also post some trend lines. Now, admittedly, trend lines are subjective, so certainly don't give more weight to them than they deserve. But if this was a rising wedge setting up here, let me go back to the daily chart. If we were seeing this rising wedge potential, let me do this, there we go. Let me clear some of these lines for you guys. Boom, 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 boom. All right. Then clearly the lower trend line has been broken if that's the case, right? If we're playing that pattern there. And you can do some measured moves on some of these chart patterns. Personally, I like to use fib retracement values better for these rising and falling wedges. But if you did a measured move, right, you kind of take like the depth of the wedge here. And so doing that, going from here to here, extrapolating it down from the breakdown points, puts that right around that 50% mark. So that's real interesting. Lines up with a little bit of a fib level. So anyway, those are some key major targets to be watching. Do you buy this dip? If you're a believer in the longer term trend, the big bull markets, I mean, you're still above the daily 22 EMA. It's still holding up. This looks like a good near term opportunity. But if it cracks below that, then I would be using those price support zones as key numbers. And so that's marked out here with the fib levels. 9150, then the 50%, which is putting it around 8700, and then the big number 618 puts it around 8300. And so those are the bigger picture numbers to be watching. But let's take a moment and just zoom out a little bit, because if we look at the weekly chart, and you can see it here on the daily chart as well, but if you look at the weekly chart, there's this potential inverse head and shoulder forming here that we were looking at a while back. I was personally hoping you'd see that form from 9,500 and pull back, but it would still technically be valid if it formed from up here. You've got this little tiny wick up here that I guess you could say is the top of that right lip or right shoulder, left shoulder, and then maybe you get kind of that scenario where you get this pullback, forms a right shoulder. There's also people saying, hey, this is going to form a cup and handle, and that's perfectly valid as well. It's basically the same scenario. You've got the big dip here, you've got a pullback potentially forming a handle, and at the end of the day, in any of those scenarios, right, it's this big breakout over 11.5 that's going to really be considered the breakout point either way, whichever pattern you're looking at, whether it's shoulder or cup and handle. And the way I trade those patterns anyway is if you get a little bit of a handle forming, I generally don't wait until the actual breakouts to enter a position. I tend to look for the reversal of the pullback. And so let's say a handle starts to form something like that, right? You get this little downtrend. When it starts to crack above this upper trend line, this descending trend line, for me, that's considered the entry point. That's the breakout point. I don't necessarily need to wait for it to clear the right lip. And in fact, a lot of times I'll take a quick profit at that point when it finally breaks out, book some gains, and then maybe re-enter on a throwback after it pulls back in from that breakout point. So That's how I'll tend to do. I'll tend to actually sell the breakouts versus enter right at the breakouts. Now there's some breakouts that I do enter on. They're a little bit more flat setups, ascending bases, that sort of thing. But this is something to be watching, right? You could see this big picture pullback, and in fact, this would be very healthy. It would help cool off this RSI. If you go to the weekly chart, it would pull it right back to some moving averages here. Let me zoom in on this weekly chart. You've got the weekly 10 EMA still way down here at 9,000, the 22 weekly EMA at 8,700. And so, price and time would do well to let both of these eventually meet somewhere here in the middle. Maybe it's at 9,100, 9,200, who knows? But this would be a nice little setup. So two scenarios on the big picture that I think are still very bullish is if you get this pullback, this higher low on the weekly, that could also go to set up a little bit of a flag pattern here, which would be one of two scenarios, right? If you're looking at the cup and handle scenario, that's going to be this big kind of cup here with a handle. I'm looking more at the inverse head and shoulder pattern, and that's what I'd be looking for right there, that sort of thing. And the way the inverse head and shoulder pattern, I like to use it, is basically same scenario, right? You kind of measure this head down to the top of the shoulder. You don't want to ever see it go further than the 618 retracement on a pullback. If it does, it's just going to have a really sloppy pattern, has some flaws in it, that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, it's more price action, right? If I see a big reversal from here and tons of volume starts coming in, holding the 22 daily EMA, then you got to give the benefit of the doubt to the bulls because they've just remained so resilient. But personally, if I had to just give my guess, my opinion, I think we downtrend here for a week or two, and it's not going to have, it's not going to happen straight down. It's going to have its bounces along the way. There's going to be some fake outs. There's a lot of ways that could play out. Maybe you get a bounce from here. People say, oh, you should have bought the dip. Maybe you double top, and then you finally get the rollover and trend for a week or two, right? There's a lot of ways it could play out. Personally, I think we got more downside to see in the next week or two, but there's going to be some trades to be had along the way. And the alts are going to be interesting to watch. Which ones bottom out first, which ones start to run again. And a lot of times you got to remember when the markets correlated, like we saw in much of 2017. We saw it in phases during 2018, but not too much. But when the markets correlated, meaning when alts and Bitcoin are running together, very often I would notice the alts would bottom out first. They'd have their deep pullback, they'd find a low, and then they'd start to bounce. And then Bitcoin would confirm and finally start bouncing and rallying again with them. And so that's going to be real interesting to see if we start watching that again. So keep an eye on some of those prior leaders, ETH, even XRP coming off the lows here, some of those names, EOS. If they start to find a low and then start to take off prior to Bitcoin pulling back, that could be an early indicator that, hey, this pullback may be done. We've seen that in the past when there's been strong correlation, like we're seeing right now. So those are the key numbers. If you're just joining, I've mostly just been covering BTC. We did look at the dominance chart here at the start. I'll cover it again here quickly. I was looking for that bounce from that 62% mark, almost to the penny. I mean, it literally came down to 62, almost exactly. Finally seeing a little bit of a bounce, and that means basically you finally got that profit taking out of alts into Bitcoin. And even as Bitcoin dropped, of course, the alts got smacked much harder this weekend versus BTC, and they were just due, right? They were overdone, but I'm still thinking alts are good. You're seeing ETH bouncing very nicely. It only came down to the daily 10 EMA. ETH BTC, I mean, just bouncing very nicely here. Bitcoin Cash having a quick reversal. It looks a little bit more broken, not quite as strong as some of these other names. EOS, man, EOS took it in the chin this weekend. Pretty steep drop, down about 22% versus Bitcoin from the highs. Back to Bitcoin here real quick. I do want to point out, we had this last time we saw what I would consider a quote-unquote big pullback, which is not really that big, but it was a little bit more significant. It was just barely over 10%, right? That was that 9,500 down to 8,400 swing, just about 10%. This one here was just a mild breather, didn't really give you much. It just basically paused at the daily 10 EMA. But if this pullback we're seeing now drops 10%, which we almost have, I guess we did see that, puts it in the 9,400s. That's what I mentioned yesterday on the Slack post. I think we were at 9,600 at the time. I said, if it hits 10% on the downside like this last pullback, look for 9400s. We saw 9460 here at the lows. So we'll see if it continues higher. I'm thinking we bounce some more here personally. Look for a little double bottom or something. I did enter in a position here just before the stream, taking a small position, definitely not going all in just yet. Gonna leave some dry powder available, but let's go look at some of these alts here. So some of the bigger cap leaders here, I'm going to just start from the top of the list here, the near-term leaders. But before we do that, kind of just coming back to here, this is still kind of flashing red, caution, that's obvious. The trading bots finally went flat here. And you notice the list on trending names. I mean, it's way small compared to where it was last week. There was a huge number of lists, names on here just because everything was so strong versus Bitcoin. Going to the bot status, the bull momentum index rating for the big cap names, how quickly things have changed. Not a single name in the green this morning. There are some positions that are still quote unquote long on the daily. Among those names, Binance Coin, ETH, Link, Neo, Lumens, Monero, Ripple, and Tezos, as the trading bot remains long on those, flat on others, short on IOTA, short on Atom. Atom has just been a laggard. Let's go look at some of those laggards first. Then we'll start with the big cap names that are strong, and then any names you guys want to look at here. Atom has been on the weak radar for quite some time. Was trying to bounce here a little bit, but just continues to be on the bear side. There was some good questions here. Someone was asking, hey, why is this showing weak and why is it saying short when Atom USD is so strong? And I pointed out that these are altcoin BTC pairs. And the reason that is, and you know, there's some good feedback about, hey, let's see USD pairs on here as well. And I may certainly add that with the capabilities there. But the reason I use BTC pairs is because I want to know what are those alts that are outperforming. This gives me a good barometer for whether or not I should be in Bitcoin or in alts. And if you want to know if Bitcoin is strong, you know, that's at the top of the market metrics here just because it's such a strong dominance. If this is saying strong and, you know, everything's peachy on Bitcoin, then there's a good chance that the USD pair for those big cap names are also going to look positive, right? But the question is, are they outperforming Bitcoin? And that's what I'm looking for here. But, you know, I can certainly add a secondary table here at the bottom and show like alt USD pair, so that way you can see when the bot status changes for those names, because I know there's trading from both sides. But yeah, Atom has been kind of weak for some time anyway. IOTA, let's go look at IOTA, and then we'll look at some of those other names. Now, IOTA has had some project issues recently, which wallet issues and hacks and all that good stuff, which has kind of squashed this big move that it was having. And it's had quite the retreat since, you know, this little climactic high that we saw a few weeks back, down about 35% at the lows, bouncing here a little bit today, along with the rest of the markets here. So some of the strong names, the better ones that have been kind of leading the way up. Let's look at BNB and ETH. Actually, you know what I'll do? I'll just filter this guy like that. So we can, let me take this guy off here. Hold on. There we go. We can just kind of stack them together. So I'll go ETH, XRP, NEO, BNB, and we'll go down the list. ETH, definitely the stronger of the bunch right now, continues to look really good here. You know, is this going to finally be the pause, or do we just take out last week's highs and just keep running? Versus Bitcoin, this has been a nice rally, had a decent pullback here over the weekend, showing some good bounce action, good relative strength here on this 4 hour. Let me draw this trend line. The lower trend line is still, you know, kind of forming those higher highs, higher lows. So that's good. It needed to cool off. I mean, there was just no question about it. It was getting way extended on the daily and the 4 hour time frame. There was some bearish divergences showing up here. I was pointing those out. Of course, it was never an automatic sell, but it was just kind of one of those, hey, be cautious here. If you're looking to initiate a position, don't go all in at these highs. Wait for a pause or a pullback. And now you got that opportunity. The question is, do you take it? Do you finally buy the dip? But, you know, we're seeing this bounce here. I personally, like I said, I'm thinking we get a bounce, but I think it's going to be a lower high in Bitcoin, and then we get another leg down on the daily, and then maybe that's kind of the bounce, the low, but who knows? But I did take a shot, so we'll see how high it goes. But nice little move on ETH here. But look at the volume on the sell side here at the tops, right? I mean, there was some big volume. This could be considered a neutral bar just because it was a big wick off the bottom. Technically, that's some buying pressure. But there was a lot of selling pressure here. Some panic selling over the weekend. I'm guessing the stops were hit, all that good stuff. But we're seeing a little bit of a bounce. But this is definitely one of the stronger names. Look at the daily 10 EMA is still right here. The bounce or the pullback is just barely touching that. That just goes to show you how extended it was. I think the better case scenario would be, instead of making a new high, it'd be nice to see kind of a little sideways action here for, a week or so, and then go in from there. But good stuff, man. So that's ETH, definitely one of the market leaders here as of late, continues to show some good relative strength versus Bitcoin. One of the other names here, looking at XRP. XRP, I was a little too early on my first short on XRP last week, finally caught it over the weekend. But now I'm thinking maybe it's time for a good bounce action here. If we go to the 4-hour chart, XRP came right back to some support, trying to bounce. It's still below the 4-hour 10 EMA. Moving averages are trending lower here, but this could be a place to watch it for a little bit of a bounce. It did have a big pullback after that nice, rally. I mean, look at this clean pullback down to support, and then just a monster rally here, but was getting way extended near term on the USD pair. Let's go look at that one, because that's really how I was trading XRP, was from the USD side. And it was just like way up there, finally hit this target. But look at where it came right back to on the dollar chart. I mean, almost perfectly to support at 27 cents. And that was a nice hold. I didn't think it'd get that far that fast. I was bearish on it here near the highs, and I thought, oh, we'll get to maybe 29 cents or something. So I started to cover in front of that. I got out of it at 30 cents, and I left a lot on the table because that second leg down would have been very nice to close out at. But I didn't. It was the weekend. I was just not in the mood of babysitting it. I put my orders in advance, so I got out in front of it. But getting a good little bounce here right at support. This is not a bad risk-reward place to look at it if you like XRP for the long side, just because you don't have to give it much to the downside. You give it a little bit below the current lows, on a trading strategy, and 2-to-1 puts it right back at, if you have to wait for 2-to-1, just above 32 cents, which was a little bit of an inflection point here over the weekend. And so 32 cents, if you wait and maybe catch a little bit of a dip, keep a tighter stop, then you're going to be closer to 3-to-1 on a bounce to 32 cents. So it just depends on where you get in. But this is a nice little potential here with a relatively low risk downside, just because you've got this clear support level to be watching. If it cracks below that, just, I would just personally get out of the way and then wait for the next level to be watching on the way down, which for XRP, and this is USD pair, by the way, is basically 25 cents. So if it dips below that. On the upside, though, the bigger target that I was watching for was basically 37 cents. I was looking for that next high, and then way up here near 45 cents is kind of your next big target. So, if this broader trend continues, if it can bounce around here, maybe put in a little double bottom or something above this 26 cent level, that'd be a good place to watch it and look for that kind of takeout. The first target, of course, is going to be near these recent highs, 32 to 33 cents, and then above that, 36, 37. So XRP, the USD pair is what I'm using more for that guy, and I'm thinking it's not a bad little place to be watching for support. What else here? What were the other leaders? And again, the trading bot is still long on the daily, but it's still flat and short on basically the short-term time frame, so it hasn't quite turned yet. Neo, looking at the Neo BTC. Neo had quite the pullback, but look at that bounce back. Nice bounce back on Neo. Came right back to, what was that, 1410. A little bit of a near-term spot here, just above it. There was a few wicks down below it. Nice little double bottom formed on that 1-hour chart. Bounce, bounce. Actually, that was almost looking a little descending. A little bit of a descending triangle there, but this in the last couple of hours, you've seen a nice push off that level. So good to see that. We'll see if it can break this pattern here. Neo is one of the stronger ones. Going to that daily chart again. Those wicks came right back to the 22 EMA. Didn't even close below the daily 10 EMA. So very much a strong name. Finally bouncing off this support. I was watching Neo, which seemed like forever, basically mid-December till like last week. It was just like range bound, doing nothing, but finally going on a move here. Nice little pullback. I think that's a good opportunity to take a look at it here on this pullback, because it's one of the stronger names right now. And you're always looking for those names that are showing good relative strength when everything is kind of pulling in. What's NEO USD look like? Let's go take a look at that guy. Yeah, nice little trend so far. I mean, the pullback was relatively mild, again, down to the daily 22 EMA on this guy. Percent-wise, that was a decent percent, though, near 20%. And that's how alts go. Up quick, down 20% like nothing. But so far, holding up relatively well. And in fact, that pullback basically came to the top of these little two double tops that we saw back here. Basically came right back to that point. So that's kind of the line in the sand. We'll see if that holds today. But NEO, definitely one of the stronger names in the bunch. Next one on the list, BNB. BNB. I'm going to go BNB dollar because that's how I was watching this guy here. I'll look at BTC pair, but BNB dollar looks like it hit that first target, 25 and change, 26. Pulling back here to the daily 22 EMA. It was a nice little breakout. That was my first target. Next target up was around $30.50. All in all, I mean, this pullback is healthy. Finally needed it, kind of getting that reset. How does it look on the BTC side? BNB, BTC. Again, similar story to NEO, kind of just pulling right back to these 22 EMA on the daily. Going to the 4-hour chart, seeing a little bit of a support being formed here. So that's kind of your first near-term line in the sand. A couple of ways that I like to look at these. If you didn't jump on it now, then what you look for is a pullback, maybe a higher low, and then a go. Or you kind of get like a little double bottom scenario, which you've already kind of seen anyway, though. You had yesterday's drop and then kind of this morning's drop. A little bit of a double bottom already kind of playing out. So maybe that was the spot, and you're getting this bounce finally in play here. Let me see at the 1 hour. Real similar chart action here. So it's starting to test some resistance. It certainly broke this downtrend resistance, but it's starting to clear some near-term price resistance there. So getting the bounce. We'll see how high the bounce goes. I think it's a good bounce. I'm thinking we'll see some upside testing here. Bitcoin, pretty mild compared to some of these other alts bounces here, but we'll see where it goes. I'm looking for maybe like 9,900, 10K on the bounce for Bitcoin, and then we'll see from there. What else? What was the other one on the list here? XRP? BNB, XLM, XMR, really Stellar? Kind of surprising. Stellar Lumens had that very nice cup and handle. We saw this one last Monday during the stream, and it finally played out beautifully. Hit both targets. First one was at 800 sat. The next one was basically 850, 845. Almost to the button, just right there, wicked above it, and then the quick elevator drop down. If you go to the 1 hour chart, I mean, that was, there was this big reversal bar you started to see, and it finally kind of just followed through, stair-stepping its way down. Very much like the XRP chart. It looks very similar. But just like the XRP chart, you're also getting this little bounce coming off of support. This is also the throwback entry on the cup and handle breakout point. I mean, slightly below it. So we'll see if you get a secondary push here off of this point. But man, how quickly it gave back that entire move over the weekend. Just very quick drop, but this is where you want to see it bounce if it's going to finally find some support here. XMR, looking at the Monero. Man, Monero has just quietly been very strong here after breaking out from this long time low here. A little bit of a maybe double bottom type of pattern on the weekly, but finally broke out, got a little choppy here at this range, but just kind of been strong, quietly moving up. Seeing some distribution here near the highs finally. A lot of big wicks in red here. But so far, the trend remains your friend. I'm just a little bit more cautious at this point now, like I said at the start. I'm looking for a little bit more of a broader downtrend. And I say that not like bear trend, but more of a pullback than just a weekend hoopla, fake out, shake out. But we'll see. Like I said, I took a little shot at it here. We'll go with it. We'll go with it as long as we got it. Tezos. Tezos is never coming down ever again. Wow, look at how strong that bounce back has been. It's not going to take much to take out last week's highs. It needed it too. Gosh, Tezos was just going parabolic for a minute there. But very good stuff, man. Look at that. New high territory. That's how you get it at the new highs. What I would like to see on Tezos here is this little kind of ascending base or cup and handle type of setup. That'd be great. You know, if you kind of got a little high, a rally, maybe a higher high, a higher low, excuse me, and then to break out. That would be ideal. But the momentum is strong with this one. And you could just as easily see it finally take out the most recent highs. So good stuff. At least the reset has happened on the RSI. It's come down. The 4-hour RSI held above 40. If you're familiar with my ABCs of RSI video, 40 is a key number. And I don't know if that's a public one. Is that an open one? I don't think that's an open one. There's a few of these videos that are open. Anybody can watch them. Cardinal rules of TA is. This is the one I'm talking about, the ABCs of RSI. It's a 30-minute video, but it kind of goes into how I use RSI. And it's more than just overbought, oversold. There's a lot more to it, but check that out. Okay, let's go to the next ones. Where were we? Dashboard, bot status. Let's let that reset here. I think the next one, that was it, right? Tezos. I think that was the last one. That was the long list here. All right, trending names. Monocoin, small cap names, Constellation, Rand, still going, huh? Lend, some small cap names. Before I do that, let me look at the comments here to see. I know that you guys are asking for some names. We'll look at Link. We will look at Dash. Oh my gosh, Dash was on my radar. I was like, come on, Dash, just break out here. And didn't happen. Icon, let's go look at that Icon. Cardano. What else? What else? Raven-matic. All right. Raven-matic. There was some crap coins pumping pretty good here over the weekend. You had Loom going. You had Power Network going. And look at how quickly they gave it all back. I mean, there's Loom, Power Ledger. I know some of you guys on the Slack group are riding this pump, but my, oh my. How quickly things turn on those bad boys. Let me see here, Rand real quick. Rand BTC, compared to most of these other names, actually held up pretty good on that Bitcoin pair. What was some of the other one? Constellation. Well, anyway, we'll come back to this. ETN. Okay, I haven't looked at that one in a while. Funfair. There's a name from yesteryear. All right, let me go through the list here. Link is still one of the stronger names. Held up very well over the weekend. Kind of pulled back. Good volume on this last 4-hour candle. A little bit of a bullish engulfing. You know, you got the open here, the close prior. Closed above the prior two highs at the red candle. So we'll see if that can finally hold. Good volume on there, bouncing a little bit. I think it's due for a pause, but I mean, it was definitely one of the stronger names. Keep in mind, it finally broke out of this big consolidation pattern, and I think the measured move is still well above where we're at, depending on how conservative you are. If you take the small measured move, you know, you're still not quite at the target, almost. But if you take the wide move here, I think that'd be a little too aggressive, but you know, you still got room to run up to around 56, maybe 6,000. So that one is good. It is extended on the RSI still. That RSI is elevated, but again, the trend is your friend. Holding up very well compared to some of these other names, but it's getting choppy here at the highs. Of course, getting some whipsaw action here, but there's a line in the sand now. This most recent swing low we saw here today was the top of this prior range back here, so don't want to see it go much below that if this is going to be the low of the pullback. Is it too much to wish for the strong alts taking out old all-time highs on Bitcoin pairs? I think some of them could certainly do that, but not all of them. And it's just going to be a case by case. Like, for example, Cardano. I think Cardano is too much of a wish. You're talking about going from 600 sats to well over 9,000 sats. Could it happen? Yes. Is that going to be the bet I'm going to make? No, because you don't need it, right? Even if it does, to 1,700 sat or to, 3,000 sat. I mean, that's a 400 or 500% move. Could it go up that high? Yeah, but you think about what you're saying, right? You're thinking this is going to go up 1,500%, and it just depends on the timeline. But there's some other ones that held up well. Could ETH do it? Maybe. I mean, ETH it's got a lot of potential there. That's only a 200% move from here. That's a 400% move from there. Yes, ETH is a mega cap, but we've seen it. We've seen it happen. So it just kind of depends on the name. Names like Icon, Cardano, like I would be shocked if you saw old all-time highs taken out on those bad boys. So it's going to really just depend on the name. EOS, maybe, right? Some of those bigger cap names. But does it happen in 2020? No, I don't think so. I think you're going to need that big climactic end of bull run to see something like that play out. And I don't think that's going to be 2020. Maybe 2021, 2022. I don't think that's going to be this year. But I do think alts will do well this year. I think we'll see some good action anyway. Dash. Let's go look at the Dash, because this is what I was watching on Dash. I was hoping that Dash would have broken out of this consolidation. It was getting tight. I mean, Dash was just real quiet. The setup was there, but could have gone either way. I was just not going to preempt it. I was definitely watching it. Had some alerts set for the upper end of the range. Of course, never got it. Broke down with the rest of the market. If you look at Dash USD, very similar price action there. Sitting real tight. Broke that lower trend line. Looked like it was about to take off. But now that you've had the shakeout, you definitely pay attention to how quickly it recovers. It did retest this support down here, but it looks like it got smacked pretty good, especially on the Dash BTC pair. A little bit of a break of trend. So what I generally expect to see now is a bounce back to the line, and then a rejection from the line, and then rolling over, making a new low. If it doesn't, if it quickly pushes right back up, that's bullish, because that just shows the resilience. That was a shakeout. And if it quickly comes right back into this range, oftentimes I won't even wait for the breakout at that point. I'll take a shot at it in anticipation of a breakout, just because that, false breakdown, quick recovery is oftentimes very bullish price action. So, you don't write them off, but for now, you kind of take the bear case and say this will probably bounce to some resistance and then roll over. ICX. Now, Icon was pulling right back in. It's still pulling down, but it's just kind of been a slow grind. I was paying attention to it here last week, thinking this would be a nice place to watch it bounce from, the daily 10 EMA, after such a very strong move. Obviously, that didn't happen. It's now at the 22 EMA on the daily, and it's still not looking strong. There hasn't really been any signals of the pullback is over. You haven't seen big buying pressure coming in yet. If you go to that 4-hour chart, basically what I'd be looking for near term, if I wanted to look at this one, I'd be looking for the 10-22 EMA to be recaptured on the 4-hour time frame, and then hold. And at that point, you've got a pretty good line in the sand. Whatever your most recent swing low is, you don't want to see that taken out. That would be my stop if I did that trade, right? If I was looking for a bounce trade on Icon, whatever the recent swing low was, when it finally takes out the moving averages, I'd be using that. And ideally, you want to see those moving averages cross back over again. So, a couple of things. It's got headwinds. There's no signs of it pulling back, but let me see here. How does it look on the fib levels? Maybe it's at a key ratio here. Let me go wick to wick on this bad boy here. Oh, it's bouncing right off the 618 right now. So, that could be it. Maybe. Definitely worth paying attention to if you're liking Icon. Yeah, let's throw H-bar on the list here. I'm just making some notes here on my other screen. Sorry for the quiet radio silence. Cool. All right, let's keep going, guys. So for those of you that are just joining here, I did a quick recap. Spent some pretty good time talking Bitcoin, some levels that I'm watching here. I will recap it again here in a minute. Let me finish a couple more of these alts. I did take a shot at some BTC here on the dip, only because it was hitting my first support level. Let me go back to that. this prior high back here at this 94,9,500 level, we saw a pretty good wick into that. Below that, you've got a really solid support level around that 91.50 level. That's also a key fib retracement zone, the first one, the 382. And so I didn't go all in here. I'm going to save some dry powder in case we do get that sub 9,400 dip today or tomorrow. But I'm thinking we get a bounce. It was a little bit oversold near term. You're seeing some of those strong alts bounce back nicely. Where does it bounce? First target's going to probably be 9,900, then 10K. From there, we'll have to wait and see how the price action looks. Maybe we get kind of a double bottom type of thing, and then we get it going again. But like I said, personally, I'm thinking we get a little bit more downside action first. So after this bounce, I'm thinking we take out the lows and maybe make a new relative low, and then that may be the time to get more aggressive. So just those are my thoughts. But for now, taking a shot, kind of just going with the price action here on the start of the week. Let's see here, H bar. This is actually pretty positive consolidation considering the last recent move. I mean, you had this shakeout, which is nice, and this is another good example of the shakeout, right? You had a low. Probably a lot of people had their stops right before that, right below that low on the pullback, and then you get the big shakeout and the quick pop right back over the line. Generally, that's positive price action there. It did find some resistance at the top of this range, but it looks like it wants to break out. It looks like it wants to get going again. So if I was liking this one, wanted to jump on here, then I would use the most recent bottom of the range. Not the swing low, not the shakeout low, but I would probably play it tighter. That's me personally. I'd do something like that. Just because of how this is coming off the highs so strongly, I wouldn't give it much more than that. And even then, that's 12, 13% if I entered here. And that means I would need a 2-to-1, which at least 2-to-1 is up here, but that's 24%. So certainly would be worth the risk reward there. And then if you take out the old highs, that's going to clearly put you over the 3-to-1 mark. 3-to-1 puts you right here. So, the wick highs puts you at 3-to-1. That'd be a 36% move from here. And, considering the recent volume and the market cap of this guy, I think you could see it. But look at how wide and loose this is getting compared to the tight action before the breakout. So that's how I'd be looking at. This is the shakeout. I don't think I'd give it that low of a stop. I'd play this guy much tighter. But, yep, definitely in play right now. Let's go look at Raven, RVN. So looking at the Raven here, man, look at that throwback right to the line, almost perfectly. But Raven's always one of those tough ones, man. It's just all over the place. You get some nice moves in Raven, but you get them thrown right back at you very quickly. And that's what this one did. Raven's one of those names where I think the dip entries, the pullback entries are much more effective than chasing the breakouts. Because almost always you get a pullback entry on Raven. And you're getting that right now. But big picture, where's this one going? I think, a lot of these alts have found a low versus Bitcoin. I think they have found maybe the low. And bigger picture, if you're positive on Raven, then you're looking at these dips as potential secondary entries, throwbacks. But some names are much tougher than others. Names like Raven, I mean, they have these Eiffel Tower patterns all over the place here where you get this quick spike up, full retrace, quick spike up, full retrace, right? Much tougher. Compare that to something like an ETH or an EOS where it's a little bit more steady grind up, but maybe smaller percentage moves. So you pick your poison, right? And you don't need to trade them all. I mean, come on. 1 or 2 or 3 good trades is more than enough, right? And that's generally my goal kind of going into the week is like, what's my 1 or 2 trade this week? Like, I really don't need to do like 10 alt trades in a week. That's generally speaking, if you're jumping around that much, you're not letting the trade play out. You're not giving it enough time to really do its thing. And it's hard to be patient when you jump in on a trade and you're like, all right, here we go. And then nothing happens. And you're like, wait a minute, I just bought. Why isn't it going up? And then you're looking around and the next day, everyone else's alts are pumping except for yours. And then you finally sell it. You're like, I can't handle it anymore. I'm going to go jump on that one. And then it goes. Isn't that the way it goes? And it's funny because coming from, we look at crypto as how volatile it can be and how quick these moves are. But if you're used to trading, say, stocks, me personally, when I trade the stock market, I'm looking at, generally I just trade the open anyway, which is the most volatile part of the day. But I'm trading, 1 minute, 5 minute candles. And so it's hard. It's a hard adjustment to make because I'm used to that quick validation. I don't have to be in a trade for more than 30 seconds usually, or a minute, to know if I'm right or wrong. Right? I jump in and I'm like, okay, I know if this was the good entry or not. And so you get that almost instantaneous confirmation of whether or not your trade's doing well, whether or not you should add. You don't get that in crypto all the time, right? You jump in and then you're kind of like, okay, maybe you got to wait a day or two. And it's hard. It's a hard adjustment to make because I'm used to okay, I just bought. Why isn't it going up? I just shorted. Why isn't it going down? But hey, today it's happening a little bit. I bought and it actually went up right when I bought. Jinx. I just jinxed it. That's it. It's all over. But yeah, you just got to, pick the one or two setups that you like, that you feel most comfortable with. You don't have to trade every alt. You don't have to trade every pattern. And in fact, if you're relatively new, I would highly recommend picking like one or two setups that you're comfortable with and get really good at those setups. Learning how to spot them, learning when to get in on that setup or when to get out, how to set targets on that setup, and just let the rest go, right? Because if you're just constantly chasing the next green candle, it's going to be very unorganized, and it's going to be very hard to tell whether or not you're making a mistake or whether it's just normal market volatility, typical probability of the reward of the trade working out, or if it was your kind of just chasing, you got in too late, you got in too early, that sort of thing. So if you're kind of new, I would, my two biggest recommendations, and this is just because of the mistakes most often made by traders, is traders overtrade and they overtrade size. So I would say pick one or two setups and just be patient, wait, let the trade come to you, and trade smaller, right? Because that's by far probably the biggest mistake people make, is they trade too big. They take position size way too strong, and then what happens is you have too much exposure, too much risk, and now like every little downtick is too stressful for you. So you're checking the charts every 5 minutes, waiting for your trade to work, right? And it's like, okay, then you're probably in too big at that point. Just some thoughts there. Neo, yeah, Neo, definitely looking good, man. One of the better ones right now. One of the better ones. So at the start of the stream, for those of you that are just joining us, we looked at Bitcoin, the Bitcoin dominance, and then we spent some time going over what are the names that are still holding up here. And so basically the big cap names, ETH, XRP, Neo, Binance Coin, XMR, XLM, and Tezos, and Link were kind of the bigger cap names that were holding up the best here versus the rest of the market. But yeah, Neo, man, Neo's on a little bit of a tear. How's Engine doing? Engine was one of those names we looked at last week as a potential setup. Not a whole lot there. Bat basically couldn't crack this 3100 level. A little double top formed there on the wicks, and then succumb to the rest of the market pullback this week here. Let's go back to that dominance chart. I'm guessing the BTC dominance chart is probably pulling in here a little bit with the most recent. I'm going to ignore that wick. But, BTC dominance, I was looking for a bounce from that 62. How high does it bounce? It'd be interesting to see if we get a little bit of a bounce. If the broader market corrects for more than, a few days here, I do think we'll see Bitcoin as a little bit of a safe haven. Get the bounce maybe to 66, maybe to 68, and then we get the alt retracements again, and the alts start taking off again. So definitely something I'm watching. 0x, let's go here. 0x and ENG. Zero X has been a tough one here. I mean, it was holding up well. I did like this double bottom that it formed right in here. And this is potentially a throwback right to the line. You can see this was the breakout point on that double bottom. Had a good rally. Didn't quite hit the target on that rally, which was 3,600. In fact, only went to 34. Actually, I think that was a measured move target. I used to have the arrow on here. Let me see. I think that was the measured move target, which means it hit the target almost perfectly, actually. Yeah, the measured move target was 33.50, and it wicked over 3,400 briefly. Pulling right back. Now the question is this the throwback entry? Is this the pullback place to be looking at for another run higher? And you know, these are generally lower risk, which means better risk reward entry points, because you can kind of get it on a reset. You're getting it just above support. You've got a little bit of a place, you know, a line in the sand to be watching for a stop, which means you don't have to give it much more than that. If it undercuts that, then it's done, right? And so that's how I would look at those. And if you like it, these pullbacks, right, the dips, are you buying the dip? Everyone's buying the dip? No one's buying the dip. Even though last week everybody on Twitter said to buy the dip. All right, let's see here. 0x dollar, look at that, came right back to the 26-cent mark there. Holding the daily 22 EMA. See if it couldn't quite hold above that level there, so not bad, not bad. TRX, yeah, let's go here. Tron, you know, my thoughts on Tron, it's a little bit of a wild card. I mean, clearly they're in expansion mode, right? And it's not something you see with most, if not any, other cryptos. I mean, there's a few crypto projects out there that are, hey, we're partnering with this, or we're buying this company, or doing something, but it's on a small scale, not to the level that Tron's doing. You know, Justin's kind of on a spending spree, accumulating, partnering. Right, you got Steam, you've got BitTorrent, you've got Poloniex, and all that other stuff. Now, that being said, I mean, I don't have anything against him personally. I don't know the guy. I'm sure he's a nice guy. But, I mean, come on, let's admit it. He's full of hot air, over markets everything, capitalizes on, you know, anything. I mean, coronavirus. Oh, here, let me tweet a picture of all these masks, and Tron's on it. Like, that's just very distasteful. You know, it's like really annoying when you see that. It's like, come on, guy. Like, do you have to tweet everything about, I mean, just, what is it, little man syndrome or something? I don't know. But smart guy. You can't argue with it. He's had some success. I think Tron is making some waves. They're gaining some more followers and had a rough start. The Tron white paper was mostly plagiarized. They claim to have more dApps than anybody else. Mostly just all gambling dApps. In fact, I think quality-wise, ETH still has better dApps than Tron, even though he will say otherwise. There's just some good projects running on ERC protocols, and I think from a quality perspective, ETH and ETH dApps are still way ahead. And so, you know, we'll see. But that being said, you know, I think Tron will have its day, and I don't think it's done by any means. And in fact, might not be a bad bet for 2020, to be honest. It's had a tremendous pullback versus Bitcoin. You know, I mean, just so many of these alts had. But this is finally finding a low. It's finally taking out some resistance, turning the trend. You know, so we'll see if that one can finally get going. And when they do, they tend to have those really big spikes. So we'll see. But I know that there's a lot of Tron bag holders that are going to be looking for those spikes to, you know, to sell into. And that's just going to be the case with most of these alts that have had this big picture. Is there's some bag holders out there that are saying, heck, if I get a to sell at this point or at this point, then, yep, unload some, right? So just some thoughts. But near term, I think it's definitely a tradable name. It certainly gets a lot of action. One of the names out there. Let's go look at Tron USD. Tron USD, even here from a trading perspective, right, had that nice breakout, pause, pullback right to this point again. And it's always interesting to see, like I hadn't even drawn anything on this chart, but it's right back to the line there. So this could be the place to look at it if you like it. I'm thinking the USD chart's probably better for this guy. Here's the way I'm looking at this potential scenario playing out on Tron. You've got this low, or this high, excuse me. You got the most recent high rally. What you're going to be cautious of is this scenario playing out. Because if you get that and a retest of this neckline, then it's probably going to crack at that point. I'd be looking out below, because that would be the case to be watching there. If it doesn't quite get that high, if it rallies, let's say, to first resistance, which is going to be, you know, in and around this level here. What is that, 23 and change? 0.0231. That'd be my first bounce target on Tron here. And then it just kind of depends on how this plays out. If it makes a higher low and then gets going, great. If it does one of those double bottoms, good. But if it cracks, and I would think a retest of this line would probably mean crack, in my opinion, and a lower low. So cautious on this one here. But this holds right back to the line right now, so this is not a bad throwback entry if you like it. It's basically back to this breakout point. You had the lows back here, you had a breakout point here, breakout here. It's right back to that point. And on the daily, weekly charts, sorry about the moving around, guys. That was your big double bottom here. So this is a throwback entry to that double bottom pattern, which means if it's going to play out, this is where you want to see it bounce. So if you like it, pay attention to it here, because next target up is 0.03. All right, market cap back to 277. Mild pullback here. Some red Monday action. We'll see here. So looking at Bitcoin, kind of doing a recap here on Bitcoin. Obviously, RSI is coming in here a little bit. Volume on the sell side has been stronger than it has been on the buy side here as of late. You got the last few days of sell side volume pretty good. Today, day has a lot of time left, so won't look at that one just yet. But more importantly, I'm looking at some key support levels. The first one is basically where we bounced from today, right? That 94,9,500 level. Then the next big level is the most recent swing low around that 9,100 level down here. This is also the high back here at 9K. This just happens to line up with some fib retracement levels. So let me move this over. I'll just kind of recap this here quickly. A little bit faster than I did at the start of the stream. But looking at the impulse move that started on January 2nd right here, this big little inverse head and shoulder that formed in the daily, if we take a move up from here up to the most recent highs at 10.5 and change, and you look at the pullback levels, right, the 382 level is this level here, which lines up with some support. That's your first target on the way down. You're getting a bounce from this first near-term support, so if it holds, great. But I'm thinking, after the bounce, maybe we hit here. Then below that, you've got the 50% in the 618. 618 is quite the move down. It's down near 8,200. Personally, I'm not expecting 8,200. I think we'll see a pullback. But if we did see that far of a pullback, that would really freak some people out. People would start to question whether or not the bull market is real, whether we're in a bull market, right? So that'd be quite the pullback. But anywhere above this, I think, would be an ideal place to look at it. And in fact, would continue to play, set up this bigger picture pattern that's playing out, right? Where you can get this little bit of a handle forming. Some people would say this is the cup and handle. I would probably go more with the head, the big weekly head and shoulder. I think that'd be the better setup to be watching there. And then a breakout from that would be just a monster move going after the, into the halving, right? Because you've got the halving coming out here in May. It's plenty of time to set up for this little pause. And man, oh man, would that be nice if we actually got that pattern setting up right into the halving. Because then a measured move from this takes you back to that major resistance move at the top, which after that, I don't think we'd see much resistance personally. So, you're looking at this takes you back to last year's highs. And then after that, not a lot of resistance. I know that the old all-time highs were 20K and all that good stuff. But if you look at the history of Bitcoin, the amount of time that was actually spent trading, closed above that 11K for once, but that 14K is very short. There's not a lot of time in the history of Bitcoin over this number. And, breaking out from that and testing that would just really start to send things up and really get things going in the broader crypto market. So I personally would be all for some more pullback, some more pausing, some resetting, because then that would really set up this pattern. And I think it'd be off to the races for the second half of 2020. That's the bull case. The bear case, that's it, it's over. We're breaking down 5K incoming, but I doubt it. All right, let's see here. EOS, yeah, EOS had quite the pullback versus Bitcoin. It was pretty sharp, but it's, the weekly chart of EOS, I think the bigger picture on some of these is really the more important thing, especially from a long-term hold perspective. And I talked about this a little bit in my Friday video, talking about, hey, look at the bigger picture, especially the weekly charts, when we finally do get the pullback. And hey, guess what? We got the pullback. I'd be looking at the bigger picture because these are potential secondary entry points in the broader scheme of things. If you're bullish on alts for 2020, you know, these are nice little secondary opportunities that maybe you can, you know, catch a bigger move, right? The bigger picture move up to next major levels. But near term, it just depends. I mean, and I do a little bit of both. I'm doing some trading, of course, day to day. But look at this. This was quite the spike down, man. It was quite the move. The ultimate bear case. The ultimate bear case. This is the ultimate bear case. Let's go back to Bitcoin. Which I'm not bearish on Bitcoin ultimately, but where's the ultimate bear case here? Oh yeah, right here. We got this bad boy. Maybe we do this. Maybe we pull right back to the lower line, which is 8K. Oh man, that freaks some people out. If we went all the way back down to here, 8K, and then breaking out after the halving. I don't think so, but boy, oh boy, would that be interesting. All right, here, let's see here. What else? Factum. There's a name from yesteryear. Not Factum Dollar, sorry. Factum BTC here. You know, this one had a few attempts here recently to get going. I was wondering what was going on, but, you know, had a nice little rally February, pulling right back. It's not a project I have followed as of late. Just I was following it way back in the day when it first kind of hit the scene. But Matic, you know, Matic had an attempt to come back to life last week, rise from the dead here a little, but it's range bound. That's really it. It's just range bound here. That's a tough one. I mean, it's just going to be tough to undo the damage done by that Matic candle. That's just brutal. Brutal. All right. All right, so that's probably it. Let me see what's going on here. I'm going to do the watch list. Actually, let's do this here. Let's do the top BMI watch list names. I'm going to just do Binance names only. Let's see what's on the list, if anything. That's it, huh? FTT and HBAR. What in the world is FTT here? Oh, FTX token. Okay. Yeah, that's okay. So there you go. It's a top BMI name today here. Maybe you get a bounce on this guy. And we looked at HBAR. I think HBAR is probably the better one anyway for a bounce trade here today. But I marked out the levels to be watching on that guy there. Anything else on those lists here today? Bittrex, let's see, HBAR, JAR on KuCoin, MAP, VidT. Let's pass on those guys. But look at how this has changed. We were overbought galore for the last couple of weeks, finally hitting oversold levels on so many names, and that's just to be expected. But for now, red day, metrics remain flat. The trading bot's gone flat finally, and it was a good run. It was a really good run. Now the question is, how low do we go? Where is the buy? Where's the dip? And so just watch those levels that I marked out. I'm thinking that's going to be the things, the bigger picture to be paying attention to in the next week or two. Which one? XTZ? XTZ. Yeah. It needs some time. It needs some time to consolidate it. I'd love to see this one just kind of sit tight here at the highs. If we can range bound in here, put a little cup and handle or a ascending base, that'd be so nice. Would just set up for a good push. Someone's asking about metal. Monaco, how's Monaco? Let's go look at that one. Metal, man. I don't know. It's just really tough with these token names. Token card names. MCO, probably the better one of the bunch here. Still ranging out a little bit. Couldn't quite break out here last week. It was looking like it wanted to. BSV. And I don't know if we looked at Bitcoin Cash either, so we could take a look at that one. BSV, still range bound here too. Look at that. It was a potential setup last week, but didn't quite get going, so I'm going to take these lines off. Kind of just going flat. Reminds me a little bit of Dash. I had that big spike and then just sitting flat and tight. And what tends to happen is after they finally crack to the downside, it's a quick move down. But it's range bound, so you've got your levels marked out here on the daily. You're right at support right now, trying to bounce. Bitcoin Cash. I always pull up that Gemini. Finally breaking trend here. Was looking like a potential mover. Had that fake breakout. Couldn't hold it and just quickly rolled over here. Took out a couple of levels here. I mean, this was the next level down. So that's tough. Little choppy there. Cool. Appreciate the new sub, my friend. All right. You normally do Cardano. I did Cardano. Didn't I? I thought I did Cardano. Maybe not. Maybe I said I was going to do it and I didn't. This is BTC here. Cardano is one of those names that I like longer term, like EOS. I'm thinking those are like good 2020 holds, personally. Right back to this moving average here. It's kind of hard to say. You had a little support last week back in this zone. Undercut that twice here on the wicks. But it's bouncing right from that point, so maybe that's the level. Did find some support here. If it loses that though, then you're gone down to 570 and then 540. And in fact, I think 540 would be the better place to look for a strong bounce on the daily from there. Because then this is the breakout point, right? This is the prior breakout point. And so from a bigger picture, if we see kind of the pullback for the next week or two, 540 will be the level I'm watching. Because if you do get that, that's a solid place to look for it. And that's on the BTC pair, by the way. All right. Okay, guys. Oh yeah, that's right. Land. I noticed Land was on the trending list. One of the few names on the trending list here this morning. But yeah, holding the trend. The trend is your friend on Lend. Oh, I just made that up. Boo. But anyway, I mean, it had this pullback. It's holding. It's definitely showing some good strength. So this one held up surprisingly well versus most of these other names here. Going to this trending list here, you've got Lend, KuCoin shares, a little green today. Mona, a little green today. Ren. Chainlink. Yeah, we did Link twice, I think. Let's see here. Thank you for the likes. Nexo. Don't have a strong, educated opinion on Nexo. Project-wise. Chart-wise, man, that's a solid-looking chart on Nexo. Challenge with some of those is the exchanges, right? Is this a KuCoin name as well? I don't know if it's on KuCoin, but hit BTC would be, it's just tough when I like to look at those coins that are on a little bit more exchanges, not just on two that I can't access. But that's a solid looking chart. Very nice. Good stuff. Ben, longtime follower, thanks for being here, my friend. Let's see here. UBT. Okay. Well, that's going to do it for today. Stock market's closed today, so no stock action for me this morning. Taking it easy. We'll see how tomorrow goes. Earnings season's kind of coming to a close here. It's been quite the earnings season. We've had some good trades for sure. So we'll see how things head out going into the next week or so. There's still a lot of things out there, coronavirus and all kinds of stuff. We've got the election coming up this year, which I think will be interesting. The markets like Trump, regardless of his insane tweets and policies. If he looks like he's going to win, I think we'll continue to see some bullish action. If it looks like he's not, then I say look out below. But okay, guys. Hey, well, take it easy. Hope you have a good rest of your day. We'll see you all in the next one. Take care, everyone.